Everybody to the July 11th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. This meeting is being held via Zoom. We have a fairly short agenda, although we have a number of folks in the audience for one of our items, so we're going to cycle through that. So as posted, we have a Finance Committee reorganization posted for this evening. Followed by discussing a resident letter that we received regarding the senior center. Then we'll move on to kind of our regular business, right? Member updates, approval of prior minutes, public input, and then adjournment. And we will kind of specifically have public input as part of the resident letter about the senior center.
Hey folks, I'm just finishing up another meeting. I'm just going to be a couple minutes. Sorry. With that, is anyone opposed to moving agenda items around a little bit? I would like to just kind of have move the senior center item up and skip over your organization. It'll just be easier for me to kind of orchestrate as co-host and get people in and out of here if no one's opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. And what I would like to do for that, did everyone have a chance to review the letter that got sent to the select board and Fincom from Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
No, I did.
All right. Okay. So I think it probably makes sense to I kind of want to keep some order and structure on time, but it probably makes sense to hear from George first, and then we're also going to have we have members from Council of Aging Liz is here, as well as the chair and vice chair of COA that have asked to speak. And then Steve, I understand PMBC was also going to come.
Steve Moore from PMBC and Brian Fours from Vertex were supposed to be on. So.
All right. I don't see them yet, but we'll go George, then COA since they're not on, and then move on to them if they're here, or move on to public input.
If I could just because I missed the first couple minutes, are we going to get a chance to ask anyone about that whole IRS item?
Yeah, we will. We'll probably get their member updates, since I wasn't sure if that would come. Brian didn't specifically post for that, but yeah, we will. Steve can speak to that. All right, so let me see. George, Mr. Sanders, you with us?
Can you hear me now?
Hey, George. Yeah. Yep. You're good.
I'm just going to get my ears. I'll be right back. Don't wait. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, George. We obviously received your letter and kind of wanted to give you a couple minutes to just articulate whatever you wanted around your concerns and the feedback you sent to the town.
Okay. I just want to sort of kind of thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the board there with regards to this. I know going back, it's nothing wrong with the fact of saying that, we need to back up and take another look because times and things have changed and so forth and so on. First of all, I'd like to point out that this board voted 4-3 when that came up at the town meeting about building a senior center, which means that everybody was not fully behind it because we even didn't have a place as to where we was going to build it. A lot of things has happened. We talked about, you can go up to $10 million and the 5 that you had, so it was going to put it around about 15 and a half or whatever the case was around there. But they wait so long to start doing things, and inflation caught up with us here. So now, after they trimmed $1 million off of it, we're still at 18 and a half on the center, plus the replacement of the tennis court. So it's like about $1 million, between $750,000 and $1 million. So you call it 19 and a half. But the thing is, they don't tell you that there's interest that's got to be added to it. So the way I look at it, with the $5 million that they have on hand, they're putting us between the 14 and a half to $17 million more that they need to go. That's almost 3/4 amount more than the suggested 10 million that was spoke about at that time on the floor. My thing is very simple. We did not have the opportunity to buy the building, but when we did, we bought it. And now things have escalated to the point that it's all out of whack. And I'm saying the new building is 17,000 square feet from the ground up. When you got a building that's already 24,000, that's standing up, that's empty. It makes sense to renovate that with the 5 million that we got in hand. And if we need to do 1 to 3 million more, fine. That's a lot less. We at least $25 million in debt today. If we took the 17 that we add on to that, that puts us at 42. The budget for the 2024 is 56 million. We're almost at 3/4 of debt if we did that as to what we got for the budget. And that was supposed to be inside the budget. So that give you no moving room around in the budget if they go forth and build the senior center. I think that the seniors last night before the select board was selfish. They should have said, in my opinion, that we realize the cost that's involved here. We rehab the fire station. We rehab Russell Street. There's nothing giving them a rehab senior center. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think that that is the way to go. Don't put the taxpayers in unnecessary debt here because there's no need to do it. And I also told them, you can't come on the town floor and ask the taxpayers to give you money to renovate the building if you're going to go and build this building when you're already putting us in debt and we're going to vote to put ourselves in more debt. It doesn't make sense. And I know that this body is the key leading body that tells us as taxpayers what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And the select board should listen to what you tell us because we look to this board as the experts. And I named you the leadership fathers of the town of Littleton is the select board and this Fincom. And as far as my thinking, I think that in my letter, I turned it just a little bit to say that we should renovate the Indian Hill, give the 17 to the senior, give the 7 to the school department because Park and Rec is in the town hall. So therefore, we've covered all areas for everybody because there's ample room for Park and Rec to expand in there. And there's going to be 15 to 20 years down the road before that building ever if it ever becomes a senior quarters for the seniors in this town. So with saying that, Mr. Chairman, I just can only say that it is God's will that you all do the right thing by the taxpayers because the seniors are the one that will be the first one that cry about the taxes going up. So I just said that we're at a point now we really need to rethink what's going on here when it comes to money. And I thank you.
Okay, George. Yeah, no, thank you for that. So one thing I guess I would suggest, so unless anyone's opposed, let's kind of go through everybody, right? And then we can have a discussion and address any info, right? And I have some insight on some of the things that kind of, some context for you, George, and some of the visibility we've had. But we'll get through everyone and then have our comments and go around. So thank you for, as always, I said, to your email, thank you for your you're being actively engaged, right? It's nice to see people that care enough to get involved. So we always appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to Council on Aging. So I'm going to let's see, Anita, Liz. All right, so Anita, Marge, I'm not sure who wanted to speak first, but or Marjorie, but I did, and Liz, it's in here as well if you wanted to comment. But
can you hear me?
The floor is yours. Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, all right. Thank you kindly. Good evening. I am Marge Payne, and I am the current chair of the COA board. And I just, I would like to start out at first to say that, George, we all understand your concerns. We do. But there's no need to be so critical and so negative about seniors in town. You are one of us, and we still love you. But still, please be a little bit more positive in the future. However, for this event, I would like to share with everyone a statement provided by the National Council on Aging on April 19th, 2023, to help people understand the actual need that we're dealing with, because we realize people don't get it. This statement reads, today's senior centers are reinventing themselves to meet the needs and desires of 3 generations of older adults. Baby boomers now constitute more than 2/3 of the 50-plus population. Senior centers are developing new programs and opportunities for this dynamic generation of older adults and have an eye towards the future, with the leading age of Generation X turning 60 in 2025. I'd like to just comment that the efforts put forth to design a space in Littleton to accommodate and meet the needs of 3 generations of Littleton residents in what has driven the current design of the proposed senior center. Yes, it is costly. And yes, the Indian Hill building was professionally evaluated in 2020 to determine feasibility for use as a senior center. And yes, the results identified that the current architecture of that building did not lend itself regarding rehabbing to meet the needs of future seniors. The formal report submitted in 2021 can be found online under the Select Board. And the issue is that the building is so structurally designed that it is actually not possible to effectively rehab that building to meet the needs of the 3 generations of senior centers we're trying to meet, and so that we are progressively ready and not having to do things in the future. So that just let me take a couple minutes, 1 more minute of your time to take a brief thought about learning from the past. COA arrived in Littleton in the 1980s. Initially, the board just met at a member's home. I was a member of that board, showing my age now. But ultimately, the town did allocate 2 previous classroom spaces, as well as a couple of offices rooms to have a senior center. That's where we're still at since 1980. Come on, folks. A retired select board member once said to me, it was so easy to always put the senior center on a shelf when another need came along. I'm asking you now, please do not repeat history and try to fit what needs to be a senior center into Indian Hill space, or put this on a shelf to be done once again in another 10 years. It would be such an embarrassment to Littleton in all to do this. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Anita Harding, our vice chair, has a couple of comments to make. Thank you.
Tyler, is it all right to speak? Hello?
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I was on mute. Yes, it's fine, Anita. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Tyler, for giving me the opportunity to speak at this meeting. First of all, I had a speech prepared, which I'll give you, but I had a comment. George, you have a right to have your own opinion, but for you to call us that were at the selectmen's meeting last night selfish is just rude and, in my opinion, disrespectful. So I hope going forward that changes. But I am here as a member of the Council on Aging to talk about the senior center project that has been developed over the last year and a half. The plans are nearly complete. We have waited for so many years. The plans meet the unique needs of the senior population of Littleton in every way. The work of everyone in the committee that has contributed has brought the thought of everything together. It is so different when building a senior center from just an office building because there are so many unique details that are necessary when designing physical infrastructure to be age and dementia friendly beyond just ADA compliance. When I look at the plans, I can see how much thought has gone into the development, not just for today's needs, but the future needs of seniors. If you go to the National Council on Aging website, you are made aware of all the changes that are current in some of the areas of programmings that this is and will be needed in the future for our Littleton seniors. There will be room in this building to meet these needs. This is a building that will live for a very long time and serve the continued needs of Littleton seniors. The space is also flexible to provide meeting space and a commercial kitchen access for other community entities. It would be a real shame to stop this process at this time. And I know George Sanders thinks that this building is a waste of taxpayers' money, but we would lose a lot more if we had to start over and try to retrofit Indian Hill, especially since the 2020-21 study of Indian Hill found the building would not meet the senior center needs. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anita. Thanks, Marge. Liz, since I threw you in here, you have anything you wanted to say, or otherwise I will move on to Steve.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Appreciate it. I'll start off by saying that I hear the concerns. I definitely myself had some sticker shock when the price rolled in, but that is, it's important to note that we are not fully done with our value engineering. There are still areas that we are working on and some additional changes that we are making. Some significant ones to the roof line, removing 600 square feet from the building. We're not building an extravagant building. Our OPM and in conjunction with PMBC went through and they did a comparison where they looked at what other new builds cost right now. And we're right in line with what other new buildings are coming in at. And it's a product of the environment we're living in. I don't think anyone can really argue the fact of whether or not we need a senior center. We're one of the only towns in this area, if not in the state, that doesn't have a very, very small population, that does not have a senior center where we are just a few rooms in the town hall. I don't think you can argue the need. It's definitely something that has been 3 decades plus in the making. Trying to retrofit our space into the Indian Hill building would have been a great idea if that Indian Hill building had a different footprint, if it had a different layout, if it was not 3 floors. But when they did the space needs study, the professionals, LLB, who did that study, they went through square foot by square foot of what we needed versus what we wanted. and compared it to what that building could offer with the footprint it had. And it was not adequate. Yes, it has more square footage, but that does not correlate to the room sizes that we need for the programs that we hold. We have nearly 5,000 Meals on Wheels coming through our kitchen annually, and the fact that that layout does not lend itself to have a commercial kitchen attached to the multipurpose room is huge for us. So that is mainly what I wanted to say. I have met with finance, and from my understanding, we have the money is there essentially. We're still under the budget, although it is alarming if you see it for the first time. But from my understanding, we do have the money allocated for this project. Trying to go backwards and fit us into Indian Hill would, in my opinion, probably end up costing more. Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me, Tyler, may I ask a question of Liz?
Yeah, sure, Fred. Yep.
Liz, this is Fred Faulkner. You mentioned that in your cuts or trying to stay within budget, you've cut out 600 square feet. What are you giving up by cutting that 600 square feet out?
That's a great question. So the removal of that square footage, it's actually 300 square feet per floor, and it's in space that was not programmed space. So it's 1 square foot, a swath, a long strip, 1 square foot through the administrative offices, and about a 3 foot wide swath through the middle of the wide lobby area through to the back of the building. So programmatically, it does not change the actual spaces, classrooms, function rooms, exercise rooms. It does not affect that, just mainly the gathering spaces and informal gathering spaces in the lobby.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing is you think that this won't, if it affects the workability of the building, it's really a marginal impact.
Marginal, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And can you comment on just ballpark the savings resulting from that change?
The actual square footage removal was probably not going to be a huge change, as it was mainly the building materials that we're taking out, because it will not affect like the HVAC systems or plumbing, things like that, based on where it's being removed, but it will show us savings in building materials.
Okay, so without this square footage, what is the size of the building now?
It's currently at 17,000.
17 even.
Yeah.
And the budget at this point is what?
We are currently coming in at 18.5, but I think more significantly was the roof line change and the window change that we're having as well, going from very detailed multi-pane windows to more your standard windows.
Okay, so that's still to come out of the 18.5, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
And if I could, since we're just on a roll, and how much has the town actually expended and or encumbered so far?
Let me pull up my sheet. Hang on.
And ballpark.
We've spent about $500,000 so far, with some bills in the queue waiting to pay.
Okay.
Plus the feasibility study, which was $80,000. We have Steve Moore and Brian Fours from Vertex waiting to come in also. They'd have better answers to some of those questions.
And I guess that's the money that's been spent, but when I said encumbered, it's like, presume we have already contractual obligations for.
We have an appropriation for $18.5 million from town meeting.
Right. And what's amazing to me, you know, regardless, is that 17,000 square feet into even if it's $18 million flat, it's basically $1,500 a square foot, which is pretty amazing to me. But
All right.
Tyler?
Yeah, Liz. Yeah, go ahead, Liz. I see your hand up.
Thank you. I was wondering if you would allow Brian Fors to speak to this. He's the expert in this area.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
He's Zoom 5. Zoom 5.
Okay. All right. Why don't I do that? And Steve Moore, do you mind? You're in here twice. Do you mind raising your hand? I'll promote you in here as well. I'm not sure which one. Okay, there you go. Thanks. Let's see.
Can you hear me, sir?
I can. Yep.
And I apologize. I was on another municipality Zoom call, and the name carried over Zoom 5, so I apologize for that. To answer just a few of the questions that I believe were brought up that I think Liz did a great job answering was in regards to the square footage reduction. We had the architect take a real hard look at maybe anything that could have been carved out, and like she said, we did take a swath out of the administrative area. We also did a pedestrian area downstairs in the lobby areas, determined that around 3 feet of a swath could be taken out of that. What we're hoping and what we're anticipating is to have savings as our construction manager reevaluates those costs, is to get upwards around about $300 plus dollars a square foot savings on that reduction. Like Liz alluded to, it's not going to get us our full price due to the HVAC systems, due to the concrete and the site work that needs to be prepared. But we're hoping to capture a good amount of that for part of our value engineering. And another question just to answer Mr. Tarbox in regards to what's been committed to date. We have this project has 3 contracts currently, one with the designer LLB, one with Vertex, the owner's project manager, and one with Commodore Builders, who is our construction manager, as we were instructed by the PMBC to go through the project delivery of CM at risk. So currently right now, we have committed costs, I believe around $1.2 million. That would be for the design, for the management up to bidding, and then for the pre-construction services from the construction manager.
okay.
So I guess my point was that's essentially sunk cost already.
That's correct. That's what the town has a contract signed with at this point. Yes.
That's what I was going for. Thank you.
Correct. The reason why I hesitated, sir, is that some of the part of the signed contract for our designer includes construction administration, which is broken out in their proposal, which only kicks in once construction begins, then their administration kicks in as well as part of that contract.
Okay. Steve, anything from the PMBC side you wanted to add?
No, I think, I think everyone's, can you hear me, first of all?
Yeah, here
Yeah,
is.
absolutely.
I've been having trouble with Zoom anyway. I think everybody's presented a pretty good cogent argument. But the problem is, in my opinion, if we delay this project, kick it down the road, it's going to cost more in the long run.
It's going to cost more in the long run if we just stop and start again. But if we believe that Indian Hill is doable, you think it's going to cost more than 18 million to rehab that and put a senior center in there?
Who is we, Fred?
What do you mean, we, paleface? I don't know. You're the expert, Steve. I defer to you on in all things building. So I
You
don't
know,
know.
I kind of go back to what Liz, and the chairman of the PMB or the
Marge.
Marge, yeah, thank you. Referred to as that, there was a feasibility study done on Indian Hill because of the layout and the program requirements of the senior center. It doesn't particularly lend itself. I wasn't involved in any of that work, but I deferred to the experts on that. I've been involved in a number of feasibility studies and understand that, programmatic needs have to fit into the space that's available. And if it doesn't, then it's not it's a no-go decision. So apparently that was the determination at Indian Hill for the senior center.
Okay. So you're comfortable that $1,100 a square foot is a reasonable number to be building a municipal building with these days?
Yeah, Fred, that's a loaded question, and I'm not going to say that I agree with that, but it's the market. The market is determining the price.
Okay, I mean, if that's the lay of the land, that's the lay of the land. It's staggering to me.
Well, it's staggering to me too. I mean, look what we built the library for. It was it $550 a square foot, something like that?
Right, and that included the slope site.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't make sense to me, Steve. But I don't know.
I'm with you, Fred. But I'm managing $1 billion worth of work for the MBTA, and it's stacked. We just put a project out for bid, and the engineer's estimate was, let's say $100. The lowest bid came in at 3 times the engineer's bid or estimate. So, we're dealing with all sorts of crazy, market conditions out there.
And I think also, Fred, to your point, if we were to, look at this again, it wouldn't be just, okay, call everything we spent so far sunk cost and you write it off and we, spend the money on Indian Hill. It's not just that. It's then plans have been made for the other departments who are moving in there. And those plans have to be, undone. And those departments, either they need to find, they then either need to find a new home, God knows where, or stay in Shattuck Street with God knows what kind of renovations, those are. I'm very sympathetic to George's point, and Steve will back me up that about a year ago now, Steve, I think it was, I came to you with pretty much all the same concerns that George had, because that was my knee-jerk reaction as well. And Steve had a whole series of conversations with me because I was not to be convinced. But I eventually got convinced that it wouldn't work. But to George's point, my first thought was, forget it, just go Indian Hill, done deal. And it sounds appealing, but it and if we had bought Indian Hill 2 years ago, maybe that we would have done that, but that's not how it played out.
Right.
And
Brian, with the circumstance, none of the circumstances have changed since our conversation back then.
right.
And to Steve's point, or Brian's point, Brian Ford's point, we've already sunk now $1 million something into this project. Plus all the time in the planning, and to go back and to start from zero again is, I think it would be more costly in the long run for us to do something like that. I totally appreciate George's points. George used to come into my office few times a year, right around town meeting time. We'd have great conversations about debt. And I love talking to him. I love to see a resident so concerned about things like that. But, and George should know this, is before something gets on the warrant, we would vet it through the budget process, and it's worked into our estimates. So this project, back in the original timeline, is all worked into the budget for the next 20 years in our estimates. Since we put the budget together, the timeline's been delayed. So we had debt service in there for 24. For this current budget season, it's probably not going to happen the way the treasurer can now time the debt. So we may not incur any debt service until 25. We had the bond in there for 25. That's probably not going to be pushed out to 26. But on our original estimates, we're back where debt service is in 23 and 20, where it's going to wind up in 24. We're back to that level, even with the addition of Indian Hill, even with the addition of the rehab for Indian Hill, even with the addition of the senior center. We're back in 5 years to this debt service level because other stuff keeps running off. So it's maybe 4 years of increased debt service now because of the delay, but it's already worked into the numbers. So
Steve, excuse me, Steve, to that point, are you comfortable that what you guys put into the debt service numbers still hold with interest rates climbing?
I have a 6%.
I haven't looked at them. I'm just.
You know me, Fred, very conservative in how I budget stuff. There's a 6% interest rate on these.
Okay, bingo.
Which is
Okay.
more than enough.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And Steve, I'd say if we were going to save, say, 10 million, I'd say, okay, write off the 2 million. So sorry. But we're not saying, if we were going to save 10 million, but we're not. So, I get that. And the other thing I'll say is that to George's point, this board has been willing to say no. I mean, at last town meeting, we got Article 10 pulled because we weren't convinced. So I think we are taking our job as stewards seriously.
And if you remember going back to when this article came around to town meeting, there was a selectman that wanted it on the warrant first. And they had an estimate, I believe it was from 16 to 18. And the selectman at that point wanted to go 16. And it was the finance committee that pushed and says, let's go to the 18. Let's go to the higher piece of the estimate, just in case. Now the higher piece back then is now the low side there because of construction costs. It's just bad timing, but there's nothing that we can do. We saw this exact same thing on the sewer bids that came through. It was unbelievable over the amount that was estimated to what they actually came in at.
Yeah.
That's just the way the world is now.
Can I ask a question?
Steve Moore. Go ahead, Steve.
What is the intended outcome of this meeting tonight?
Yeah, so
Motion to adjourn, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, Steve, it's a good question, right? I mean, obviously, we posted, or I posted the agenda item, or we did as a group, just to ensure that, we didn't just cover, the letter that was sent to the select board and Fincom through member updates. We don't have a specific agenda in no definitive plans to make a motion or recommendation out of here, right? We just wanted to make sure that we were being good stewards and at least having the conversation, especially since, a lot of times in the past, we've been much more actively involved in, I'd say, having some visibility as these projects are rolling out and with, some of the turnover and changes in, the finance staff in the town and Ryan's challenges with time, right? We don't always feel as connected, right? So we just wanted to make sure that we were having a vigorous and as informed conversation as we could.
No, I agree with that. I mean, George has got a lot of good ideas. He does a lot of good for the town, and we certainly need to engage him and his thoughts in the conversation. But I'm just, since neither PMBC nor Fincom make policy decisions, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, what is this conversation going to lead to?
From Steve, this is Fred, from my 2 cents, I think it's important when something like the letter comes up, that we at least air it and we have a discussion on it. I personally hate the fact that we're spending this much money to build a building.
I do too.
Unfortunately, it's the world we live in right now. And the senior center, I think, has value going forward to the town. So I don't think, putting it off for 5 years doesn't make any sense. If the Indian Hill truly, doesn't work effectively for a senior center, then that's off the table. And our only option is to go forward. I wasn't on the Fincom when this came to town meeting, so I can't take any credit for pushing the select board to put extra money in. But it's a good thing we did, because if we hadn't done that, we'd be going back to town meeting with hat in hand to try to support the program, or slashing the heck out of the project, which I don't think is the right thing to do. So I think we're giving the issue a fair airing, and that's just my feeling on what tonight is about and where we are. I personally don't think we should vote to kill the project or anything else.
So for what it's worth, I was the Brian Fours, if you will, on the Groton Senior Center a few years ago, and they looked at repurposing the old building, or just knocking it down and building a new building based on their programmatic needs. The existing building was 2 levels, and the new building was a single level, and it turned out that, the single level building actually cost a little bit more. I think it was $12 million. But it provided the programmatic needs in a very concise, and the design worked out perfectly for the programmatic needs. And anyway, I understand balancing programmatic needs against square footage and cost, but if you're going to build a senior center, do it right.
So are you saying that the Groton's building is better as a single story than what we're doing as a 2-story?
Well, it was for their program. Yeah. Obviously, when you have a 2-story building, you have elevators, you have bathrooms on 2 levels, you have stairwells, you have all that required space that's not programmatic, but they had a much steeper hill than we do, and anyway, I'm just saying that my experience was that the new building at Groton worked out better than a repurposing of the old building.
Steve or Brian, you
Okay,
want to talk
so-
about the timeline moving forward?
Yeah, I think Brian can talk to that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Steve. So currently right now, we have, like I alluded to earlier, we have our construction manager on board who's Commodore Builders. They're actually the same team, as well as myself, that was part of the library project. To give some context with Steve's comment, the cost that we had for construction over at the library ranged from $650 to $700 a square foot for hard costs of construction. Currently, right now, what we're estimating, this is before the added value engineering that we've put in, is upwards to around 900 a square foot. And that's where we did the comparisons to with some other recent builds that have been done in the area. So that is just a reflection of probably 4 years and where we sit now at the market. To give a schedule update on where we are, because of the value engineering efforts, we've gone back a little bit. We've done some redesigning with some roof lines. We've done some redesigning with some wall types. This was originally a dual build of stick frame and steel. We've consolidated into a steel building. We've eliminated some of the masonry components that were around the exterior in order to make some savings there. All in all, what I'm saying is that has created a little bit more design time for our design team and their consultants. They're currently in construction documents right now, scheduled to be completed probably by the end of August. In conjunction with that, because this building is going to be over $10 million, Mass General Law requires that we do a pre-qualification effort of our filed sub bids. We've completed that effort. We'll be recommending a pool of about 100 contractors that will be able to bid on this job. So the hope is that with a substantial pool of contractors that we're providing to the PMBC, that can drive up some competition and hopefully get some pricing down from the estimates that we've received to date. That is usually a 4 to 5 week procurement period. So that will take us into October. At that point, we take our results of the filed sub bids, give them to our construction manager, and they infill the remaining costs to create the guaranteed maximum price. We give them a few weeks to give that and present that to me as the OPM and to the PMBC. That would be evaluated. And then at that point, if we are within budget and we get approvals from the powers that be, we would be issuing a notice to proceed under an amendment to their pre-construction services to begin construction. So long story to answer that question would be is that towards the end of the year is when we would begin construction.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
So Brian,
And,
Brian, to use a financial metaphor, past performance is no indication of future performance, but the over at the library, Commodore was the contractor there, and we, I think our change order percentage was like 2%, and most of that was owner driven. Is that correct?
That's correct. With the CM at risk delivery, the owner will have some contingency, and then the construction manager also holds their own contingency, and we manage that throughout the process. At the end of the library project, there were leftover funds in the guaranteed maximum price that we were able to give back to the town.
all right. Anyone else have any other questions for Steve or Brian? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I could go for a second, then we'll kind of do one more circle, right? But you know, I guess a couple thoughts addressing some of the things that Georgia mentioned, right? I mean, you know, obviously you know, as a board, you know, Fincom has kind of repeatedly expressed, you know, some concern around, you know, making sure that when we're having these articles for town meeting, we have a real clear picture of the all-in cost, right? And we revisited that as recently as 2 weeks ago with Ryan, right? Just you know, the ask that we're not rushing articles to town meeting floor. We have enough time to really, you know, have those numbers, make sure the public is informed, make sure we can ask questions, you know, make modifications, right? There've been a lot of last minute articles recently, and Indian Hill's a good example of that, right? So you know, that's an ask of us, you know, to town administration, something we asked, you know, we talked about at the select board retreat this week, just so that we're not getting into these last minute things. Obviously we don't have a lot of control over that as we don't answer articles for town meeting, but it's definitely something that's on our radar, and we're trying to help coach and ask if we have more information as the public.
I think one of the things that we need to get back to, and we did this for years, is you don't go to town meeting without bids in hand. And that's something we've gotten away from, and we should probably strive to get back to that. I know in a lot of cases it's not possible, but where it is possible, we need to do that. We won't have
Yeah.
these surprises. That's all.
Yeah, and as a board, I mean, even with the senior center, I mean, we were very involved in looking at the costs of, the slope side site versus where we ended up today, right? And I think, some of that stuff are things that as we rebuild the finance team in town, we need to get back to some of that too, right? I mean, I think, we're having to reach out and pull in information versus having information flow as organically here. So I think there's still something that, I'll continue to advocate for that. But I think that's been something we've all been feeling, the absence of, and again, I mean, to credit, all credit to Ryan for keeping things going, the best he has, but he's overwhelmed, and we don't have the staff that we had to work with and get things done as in as timely a fashion as we had. So, as the town gets back to full staff on the administration side, I mean, some of those pain points will hopefully go away. Indian Hill retrofit, that is something, also, we addressed as of, 2 weeks ago, and that we were told was also on kind of the select board's retreat agenda to talk about, right? Because from the special time meeting we had, we obviously had some concerns on those costs, and that renovation article was pulled, but, that hasn't been revisited yet. So even going back and looking at the costs of renovation of that building for the original intended purpose at purchase, that hasn't kind of risen to the top of the pile again. So clearly, that would have to be a, kind of a select board priority for that being, top of list, and obviously, looking at alternatives to even those additional intent, would take time and some policy decisions that they wanted to head in that direction versus, what's already been voted at town meeting. Last thought again, I mean, just, again, we've said this a lot, but for those that are watching at home or in the audience, I mean, free is never free, right? I mean, whenever we make these decisions where, even whether it's under the levy or outside, as we may have things in the future with the schools, it's always, it's always at the expense of something else, right? Whether it's, putting money into reserves or funding the capital plan, right? I mean, there's everything we do is not free, right? It's at the expense of something else that we can't do under the levy. So just for those watching and not as informed, I mean, it's there's only a limited pool unless we take and have an override, right? So every time we do a new building, whether it's the senior center, the library, police station, Indian Hill, we're not doing other things. So let's go around the circle again. If anyone else has anything else they wanted to add to this agenda item. Steve, anything else you had?
Nope.
No. Gary? Brian, go ahead.
Sorry. Have
no,
we,
all good.
or the selectmen, actually asked PMBC to look at trimming the Indian Hill reno costs? Because part of our objection was, wow, some of these costs seem like, they're not necessarily have-tos.
Yeah, so we specifically asked that of Ryan our last meeting, and that has not been looked at since the special town meeting. He was going to make sure it came up in their retreat, which I believe is tomorrow, and get some guidance from the select board on where that fell in their list of priorities for his time. All right, Jerry, anything else from you on this one?
No.
All right. Brad?
No, like I said, I hate the price tag, but it is what it is. And I think it will be an asset, so I'm okay.
All right, Al? Hey.
Nope, nothing.
No. All right. Thanks everyone for it's in the audience that came to discuss this one. With that, we will move on to Finance Committee reorganization. With that, we, currently, I'm the Fincom chair, although, I will be around for a while. I'm not looking to be reappointed. Steve is currently the vice chair, and we currently have a vacancy for the clerk of the Finance Committee. Tom Perrell did officially submit his resignation, so that is that it's a vacant seat right now. So I guess what I'm, looking for is 3 members that would be interested in serving in those 3 roles, and then, and then a motion to appoint 3 members to fill those chairs.
Well, traditionally, we moved the vice chair up. And seeing how Steve was unceremoniously let go on 6:30, which is to our benefit, I move that Steve Venuti be elevated to chair for the next round.
Second.
Right. Well, I think that's a fabulous idea. So we have a motion.
That's just my take, but
Yeah. I mean, any discussion there, Steve? Are you willing to step in and do the job you've already been doing?
Yep, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second, and a willingness to serve. So with that, roll call vote for chair of finance committee, Steve Venuti.
Aye.
Aye. Fred.
all right.
Jerry.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
All right. I'm a yes as well. So I guess would anyone like to volunteer for the other 2 spots? Express a willingness, and then we can make a single motion for both if there's a willingness to fill those spots.
Can I voluntold Fred for vice chair?
Yeah, I'm willing to do it, but I think it's an opportunity for somebody else to move up. I've done it a number of times, but I am willing to do it if that's the will of the committee.
Would anyone willing to raise their hand either for vice chair or for clerk?
I'm willing to be clerk. I mean, I don't know that the clerk in this committee really does anything, but
Yeah.
Well, as long as Marilyn's with us, you're covered pretty well.
Yeah. As long as Steve remembers to invite Marilyn and does a better job than me, right? All right. So, barring, I guess last chance for anyone else that wants to express a willingness for vice chair. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move Fred as vice chair and Brian as clerk.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion. So we have a motion and a second to appoint Fred Faulkner as the vice chair of the finance committee and Brian Tarbox as the finance committee's clerk. Roll call vote. Al?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brian?
aye.
I'm a yes as well. Right. Thank you all for your willingness to step up and continue, your stewardship of the town's finances. Moving on to member updates. I guess I'll jump into one quick, something I should have posted for here, but, we can get on the agenda next time. There is a requirement to appoint, probably a new primary member, if we could, for the tax and transportation advisory committee, and then also kind of a longstanding reminder that the alternate for that's been vacant, I think, for a couple of years. So something that folks can think about for the next meeting. Just kind of, it's a board that oversee, just kind of, advisory, as I said, right, that they, Maren goes and Liz, and we talk about transportation issues for the town, right? So it's, not a huge list, meets, I think once a quarter. Actually, Marilyn's on the TAC and is raising her hand, so I'm going to allow her to talk for a sec here. Hey, Marilyn.
Unmute.
Yeah, in fact, we had a TAC meeting tonight. And
Yep.
the same as the last one, we did not have a quorum. So, and I think one of the reasons is the timing. It's 5:30 on a Tuesday night, and I think 5:30 is an awful time, but that's beside the point. But anyway, and they're thinking the next meeting might be the end of August, but as you know, Tyler, it was not there. 2 minutes, 2 meetings, 2 months apart, sometimes 1 month apart. That they're not regularly scheduled, and I think that's part of the problem with it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, 5:30
definitely.
would certainly be tough.
It's horrible.
All right. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, it's definitely an important group. It has some, seniors are very involved. We talk about senior transportation issues, et cetera, right? So, but maybe that's something that we could recommend as an alternate time, because I think, it's probably been years since, I think a long time since I've seen a select board, member on there as well, right? So when you have, Council on Aging, Fincom select board, and kind of a lot of the member at large seats, I think, are unfilled right now. They've
Well, I'm the COA person,
Okay.
but
All right.
yeah,
That's all
they've
I
had
have.
a lot of the highway department stuff was on tonight with all that they're doing and when things are starting. So that was a really, nothing could be voted, but that was really one of the best TAC meetings I'd been to. Okay, I'll let you go back.
Okay. No, it's good. We'll leave you in here we'll get to the minutes soon. I'll let you still talk. That's all I had for member updates. I guess, the only other thing I guess I'll just mention, right? I mean, there was obviously some confusion that I had and some mixed messaging between, town clerk and vice clerk. I'll, until the school committee is inclined to appoint someone else. I mean, I'll continue to stay involved the best I can. Really struggling with my work schedule and ability to commit, but I won't go running for the hills and stay here, at least for the time being, unless work becomes more manageable. So there's some continuity.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. Anyone else have a member updates?
I had one question, and I don't know whether this is for Jerry or for people down at the water department, but I received a note from the sewer department yesterday, I guess it was, and I actually read through it. And one thing stood out to me that that 550 King Street is going to pick up about 60% of the bill. The residents the residential and commercial will be about 20, and the town will be 20. The municipal buildings have run between 9,000 and 11,000 gallons a day forever. We haven't added any potties or any people, so I can't imagine that we're running much more than 10 to 12,000 gallons a day. And with a system that's good for 240,000 gallons, the math doesn't work for me for the municipal to pick up 20%.
The municipal isn't 20, and municipal is more like 2.
Not in their document that they sent out yesterday.
I believe it's around 2%. It's between 2 and 3%.
And that's more what I would expect. And if that's really the case, then I'm fine. But if for some reason it's really 20, then it's off their document, Steve. So yeah, if it's inaccurate, it's inaccurate.
Yeah.
But I'll follow up with them just to make sure. But I'm fine at that lower level, obviously.
So Fred, what document was that? Sorry, I missed.
I just signed up for updates, and they sent an update out. I think it was yesterday or over the weekend. I read it. And, you know, it's just a table and those three numbers were there. And I said, whoa, that seems like a lot, because that would be like close to 50,000 gallons a day for us, which just, you know, not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for
and
following up.
if it's an erroneous table, then it's an erroneous table. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it warrants some follow-up.
Yeah.
Yep, I will definitely do that.
Yeah, no, you know, and it's just, if it's a typo, it's a typo, and that's great. But if it's not, then we should look into it. That's all. Okay,
All right.
good for me.
I guess, Steve, I'm stealing your thunder going through the agenda. So
No,
sorry about that.
you're doing a good job. You go right ahead.
So, Brian, I think you might have been talking on mute there. Do you have an update as well, or anyone else?
Yeah, the only update is just my question about the IRS transfer. And I will say that when we were asked to vote, essentially the motion last time we met that said Fincom says whatever TA and selectmen want to do for line transfers is fine. You recall, I was fairly skeptical about it, and skepticism seemed justified to me when I saw $91,000 for an IRS penalty. It's like, I don't like surprises.
So this may be a surprise to the finance committee, but it's not a surprise to the town administrator and finance people and probably some select board members also. In the transition between me and the former treasurer, he really didn't handle the tax payments the way they should have been handled. And he made some very careless mistakes back in 2021. When he recognized those mistakes, he tried to correct them and just compounded the error by doing that. So when you pay taxes, you have to basically say to the IRS what quarter and what year it's related to. And in a couple of instances, he put the wrong quarter in, and in one instance, he actually put the wrong year in. So when you overpay the IRS, they send you a refund check. When you underpay the IRS, they assess penalties and interest. So in the quarters where he put in the wrong quarters, the IRS doesn't care that you put in the wrong quarter. They say, oh, you overpaid for this quarter, here's a refund check. So instead of calling the IRS when he received the refund check to piece things together, he cashed the refund check. He then got a penalty and actually a visit from the IRS at one point to come up with the penalty. So he paid it, I believe, in July of 20. When did I go back? I went back in August 22. He paid it in July of 22. And we saw the penalty amount after he left and reconstructed what happened and actually got in touch with the IRS and a representative from Representative Trahan's office. She got an advocate for the IRS to work with us. We appealed the penalty. They denied the appeal. And there's nothing else we can do. So we had to pay that, and it needs to be funded because it was an unbudgeted number.
So this is from 2020, Steve?
21.
2021?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And I can totally understand that. I mean,
it was just this careless mistakes, and unfortunately, there's when he should have taken other steps to rectify it, and he didn't.
Right. I guess.
Why is it coming in a year-end transfer and not a reserve fund months ago? Is it the timing? Did it just come in now, or has it been hanging
Well,
around?
he paid it
town hall?
in last July, so he paid it in the beginning of this fiscal year. But by the time we noticed it, reconstructed what he actually did, made our case to the IRS to get it reversed, we were well into this year. So this was, it wasn't worth going to the finance committee and ask for a transfer at that point.
Okay,
I thought of it, but it wasn't worth coming.
okay.
I guess I would just have wished that when we were being asked to essentially give blanket approval, it would have been great if this was mentioned as one of the things. Because,
Right.
because specifically when we asked about this, we were told, oh, there's a bunch of little things. Yeah, there's the golden parachute, or there's however we want to call it, but everything else is kind of small. And it's like, well, I really wish we'd been at 91,000 is not small. So
Nope.
I think we should have been told. And I think if we had been told, I might have been a little bit more vociferous in saying, I'm not sure I want to approve the blankets.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, right. Yeah, and for me, Brian, it all kind of lands on the same kind of similar thing where I feel like, I think, in years past, we really were fortunate and that there was a really open flow of information that came to us. And I feel like, we don't, there's a lot of things that just aren't hitting our radar and when we get a sniff of things, we're pulling information in, but I feel like we're just obviously things that we're just kind of missing. The flow is just not.
That's
not
the
there.
problem without a finance director right now. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's lack of information. I mean, Fred and I can attest back to when we didn't have a finance director and the pressures it put on the finance committee to do the budget actually internally. So it felt like going back to those times.
Right.
And to me, it kind of spoke to, my feeling that it's important that we're looking for a finance director as opposed to putting it on hold because, there could be other big things that happen because you don't have somebody watching those things. Was this one tax payment or was it?
No, it was like 5 mistakes he made.
Was it payroll taxes or? Yeah.
So, the other, while we're talking about the list, the other two things that if Ryan was here, I'd be asking him about was the building inspection salaries. It's not clear to me on what he's saying here, whether the fees are actually paying for this inspection salary. It's
we're sharing
Right.
sharing a person with active.
Yep. Yeah, we get 18 hours and are the
So we're the lead town. We're paying his salary and we're being reimbursed. The reimbursement has to be a revenue to the general fund and it doesn't offset the budget. So the budget needs to be the full amount of the salary. And that's the way it's been budgeted for 24.
okay.
It wasn't done that way in 23.
Okay, so
So we have the money, it's just on the revenue side.
okay. So we won't see this again next year.
If it was done properly in the budget, no, we shouldn't.
Okay. And the other thing was with Anthony, I assume there's more payout beyond this. And will it hit 20? I assume it'll hit 24. And is that covered or not?
There's a payment that was due in July, July 1st, I believe. And so that would hit the 24 budget. But don't forget now we have only one person in the office and we've budgeted for 2 up there. So we're short an assistant town administrator salary, which is, as long as that takes to fill that other position, fill the town administrator, then find an assistant town administrator, it's going to offset a lot of that money. Will it offset 100% of it? Probably not.
Probably not. That's what I'm wondering. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
something that we should at least keep an eye on.
Yep.
If it comes, popping up at us at the end of the year. Okay, those were the only, well, the big three things on the list. I agree with Brian. That's why we want to see the list and not just say, yep, go ahead and make the adjustments.
Right.
Going forward, I don't think that's something that,
There's probably something that you should have seen, like a preliminary list or something. Because one was
Yeah, well,
put together right at the end of June that you could have seen it.
I next year, certainly, I would agree to that without seeing the list.
Again, it's without a finance director. It's
That's fair.
Well, I guess while on this topic, the one other thing that triggered my interest or my radar a little bit is just I feel like the fire overtime line, right? We keep talking about that one year over year, and that embodies to offset that, and that line just keeps on ticking, right? So I think that's something that as we're going into the budget process next year, we need to.
they
look
had
at
a
again.
rash of injuries and sick time and everything, and they have to cover shifts. And so they actually hired someone, and then it fell through, and so it's been a tough year for the fire department.
It seems to be the story across the board in the municipal world is finding qualified people and keeping them is just a zoo.
Tell me about it.
No, it's a zoo. It's absolutely at all levels. It really is. It's crazy. Okay. All right. Then. Anything
else
on the list? I mean, that's everything I saw. But.
All right. With no more member updates, approval of minutes. Let's see, Marilyn, I'm trying to see what you had sent out.
I think I made one little adjustment.
You did, and I fixed it. I didn't resend it, but before I send it.
Yep.
And I read it and it looked fine.
All right, so that was from 6/27. So would someone be willing to make a motion to approve the minutes from June 27, 23?
So moved.
Second.
I got a second. All right, great. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Finance Committee minutes as amended by Fred. Roll call vote. Steve?
I'd have to abstain because I didn't see them nor their
He
attendance.
wasn't.
So
Okay. All right. Fred?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
I'm a yes as well. So we have 5 affirmative votes and 1 abstention. All right. Public input. If anyone is in the audience and still would like to be heard, feel free to raise your hand. George, I saw your hand there for a sec. Did you have something else or? No. Okay. So our favorite motion of the evening.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I get it. All right. Moved and seconded. The Finance Committee adjourns our meeting of July 11th,
George is
2023.
raising his hand.
Oh, all right. All right, hold on. Here we go. George, give me 1 sec. All right, George, you are.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can, sir.
Okay. I had a question with regards to the senior center on the money. That's going to be within the budget, within the levy that's going to be paid. Is 18.5?
Yep.
Yeah.
The next question I had was on the, which it hasn't came up yet, but on the Indian Hill building for the rehab, is that money that they're going to ask for, is that going to be within the levy as well?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I think that's the plan. Yeah, George, I guess just to expand on that, right, we don't have, there was an article that was going to come to vote at the special town meeting. That article was pulled. So since that article was pulled at the special, we do not have new numbers for rehab that have been gathered by anyone on the town side or reviewed by our board or the board.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that they ain't gonna come in there and ask for debt exclusion, which would raise the taxes. Because some people may not have a big concern about the debt in this community. I do.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other people that have concern about the debt, because we know that the school that is in the preliminary stage now, the state will help us with some of that, but we know that's going to be outside the levy. I know that. I don't have a question about where we're going to go when that comes to us. But these other things, I just want to make sure that you're going to have enough money within the levy to pay these bills, because that is a great concern to me. And as I say, I'm a straight shooter. If I say it, I don't mind putting in writing. If I think something is done in a way that something is being selfish, so be it. That's where I am, and that's where I see it.
And George, for just a point of clarity, because sometimes these things that happen right before town meeting are missed too, right? But I mean, FinCom and Select Board were posted prior to the special town meeting, and Finance Committee voted to not support the Indian Hill renovation article, which is what at least the majority did not, which is why the Select Board posted that article, right? Because even though that was going to be under the levy, we had concerns and questions, and it had come in to the last minute. We just didn't get addressed, right? So rather than, kind of.
I understand that. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Don't misconstrue what I say. I understand that. Probably a lot better than a lot of people do, because
sure.
I've dealt with the federal government multi-million-dollar budgets. So I know about budgets, and I appreciate everything that you all are doing. And that it's not an easy task. It's a difficult task. I just think that we just need to make sure that the people understand my taxes. That's one thing people worry about, my taxes going up. And when they get the knowledge of what this thing is costing, that isn't what was said back at the town meeting, because I remember the magic number was the 10 million that they said, if you go there, you'll be okay. If you go past that, you may have some problems. So we went past that. So we'll let it be as it is and move forward. And I thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, George. All right. So moved and seconded that we adjourn. Roll call vote. Steve?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Brian? You're on mute. All right. We got thumbs up from Brian. Thumbs up. All right.
You don't get two votes, Brian. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm an aye.
All right. Fred?
Aye.
All right. I'm a yes as well. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.